Okay. Good morning, everyone. Can you guys hear me clearly before anything else?
Sounded good.
Okay. So today we are going to talk about D3 visualizations. So actually it's the D3 framework itself and how we are going to use it for application. So this presentation is a starter pack. So we will go into deep diving into some of the things that you should learn while working with D3 for it to be easier for you in the future to look at like more stuff. And hopefully in the future, if anyone is viewing this, hey guys, if you have just joined EV, hope this thing helps you with D3 as well. So let's start. So here, D3 visualizations starter pack. Assumptions. I'm assuming that you already know the basics of the following: HTML and the document object model, CSS, and JavaScript. So I won't really go too much and deep dive in some of the things, but if there are cases where I think it should be discussed, I will discuss them. What to expect? So I will teach you some of the D3 basics. I will show you some of the learning paths available, great references you can use. There's also quick start tools, so you can code now, set up later. And then hands-on demo. I believe it's still the best to show things in code itself instead of just presentations. So what is D3? So D3, as everyone probably knows already, data-driven documents. So it is data-driven. And right now, we have version 4, which has HTML, JavaScript, CSS, and SVG. And then recently, I'm not sure what the date is, but V5 is released. And it seems like Canvas is already available as well. So just to show. So what can we do with D3? D3 helps us do a lot of data visualization. A lot of like the main usage people use for D3 is like digesting a lot of data, doing graphs, maps, and other stuff. And I do see some people who use D3 for creating games. So yeah. So we have maps here. As you can see, there are like this bubble or rather hexagon placement in the map with heat maps there. There are also crazy visualizations such as this. That can be done with D3. And there are a lot of available like presets or already built ones that you can refer to build your own visualizations. Okay, so before diving deep into some of the other D3 basics, let's discuss SVG. So what is SVG and why do we need to understand it? So SVG basics, well, as you already know, it's called scalar vector graphics. And SVG has a lot of shape elements you can use. So here I also provided some links to things if you wanted to open that. Let me actually open the link right now. So you'd see. So this is the all classic W3 schools. You can learn all of the SVG shape elements available here. So if you want to deep dive in the future, you can go here and then just read each one, but I'll be discussing some of them. So here, the SVG shape elements we have is rectangle, circle, ellipse, line, polyline, polygon, and path. And you can see here on the right side some of the visualizations on how they actually look like. I also noted there are some of the attributes they have, like a rectangle has this X and Y attribute in an SVG. The line has this X1, Y1, X2, Y2 as its coordinates, and a polyline can have multiple ones. A path is a bit different because it has like curves, move to, move here. So I'm not gonna discuss that in detail here, but just to give you a hint of what the shape, SVG shape elements are. Next, SVG elements have attributes. So how do we work with that? So for example, if we have rectangle, the SVG attributes for a rectangle is there's the X and Y coordinate, here's the width, and there's a height. And there are also attributes such as fill, stroke width, with 2 here, and stroke with white. So here's how it looks like if it's displayed. And then there's also a circle. Circle has attributes as well. It has its radius. Actually, it's called radius, but in code, it's just R. So why am I updating while I'm presenting? But yeah. So and that it has like the CX and CY as its coordinate center. And in here, it also use fill blue, stroke width to stroke white. And something to know about SVGs is that it also allows styling. So you can use CSS to style them aside from just their basic attributes. So, but why use SVG with D3? First, it's fast. It's unpixelated. It can be responsive, so it can adjust to the viewport. It's CSS friendly, like I've mentioned earlier. You can also export SVGs from design tools. So just in case you have special things you wanted to use in your maybe visualizations, you can even use Photoshop, export it SVG and import it into your site or your graph. And then you can also use, I think everyone is already familiar with SVG images. They can be totally scaled, like from 10 by 10 pixel to 1000 by 1000 pixels with lossless, because again, it's unpixelated. So in here, we can conclude that we have data visualizations built using D3 powered by SVG. So here, as you can see, all of this graph here is actually powered by SVG. So let's go next. So other SVG references, just in case you want to deep dive, I also added here, and there are a lot of YouTube references. Okay, now we go to D3 basics. So here I'm gonna show you some of the things you need to understand before we could actually go with like advanced stuff, creating the graph itself, and also maps. So first thing, as all tutorials, we need to understand how to install import D3. So just the very basics, npm install yarn r D3. Or, and then when you import it, it depends on the framework you're using. If you're using React, Angular, or maybe you're using a backend tool like Node, here's the basic import script. So you can assign it to D3 using require or import. And then let's go to the D3 DOM manipulation methods. So what do we have? So in D3, we have a way of selecting elements in the screen. So we have select all, and then we can insert elements, append, and remove. So let me show you how that works. So let me show you. This is actually a simple script I've already created earlier, but let me delete stuff here. So open right now. Let me clear the screen. So keep this one. So it's all gone. So in D3, we can use, what's this? We can select an element. So right now, let me just show you my HTML. Right now, I have a div container here, which is something I'll be using as the container for the SVG. So here, I can select that. In the presentation, you can see that I noted here that the value or the parameter you're passing to select is a CSS selector. So if you're familiar with jQuery, all of the basic CSS selector is something you can use here. So as you can see earlier in the element, I have container. So I can use this container. And when I select that, it returns a selection. So just to deep dive there, it returns a group with that specific div container available in there. So right now I'm gonna use that, and I'm gonna use that container and append an SVG. So I will create an SVG. So append basically inserts an element or tag in your selected container. So if you don't, let's say if you don't include the select here, if you didn't select any container, it's gonna append the value in the body of the HTML. So here, let me just put this as here as well to use that SVG. Oops, it's already used because I have it in my code. So SVG, right now, nothing happened. But if you see here, I can also show you that the SVG is created and in the element itself, SVG is available. So first thing to note here, we are able to select the container. We're also able to append an SVG. What else do we have? We can also select like multiple items in the screen, select many items. And you can also remove an element. So just to show you here, let me show SVG, let's say select, rather append. I can append a paragraph. And you'll see that the paragraph is also available in the element. Right now, it doesn't contain anything because I didn't put anything in there. But I'll show you now that you can also, in the next screen, is that you can also update attributes and styling. So what's that going to do? It lets you update like the attributes and style of an element. So for example, by the way, guys, stop me if I'm going too fast, okay? Or if you have any questions, because I might just continue on and on. So in here, since I already have the paragraph, I can use D3 select, let's say that specific paragraph, and I can update some of, let's say, the text. This is a D3 tutorial, let's say. Let me just make sure I have that. Yep, this is a D3 tutorial, and for some reason it's not showing. All right, because it's inside the SVG, so it doesn't work there. Let me just do that. Let me select the container itself, select container, and then append as the paragraph there. By the way, D3 also allows chaining. So as you can see here, I selected the container, I appended a paragraph, and then afterwards I updated the text in that paragraph. So you'll see that this is a D3 tutorial has been appended. And since I selected the container, it was added at the end of that container. You'll see it here. And then let's say if I have multiple items here, here we go. You can also select all and then select all of those items. And you'll see that I have those 4 elements. It actually included that item inside the SVG. That's why there are 4. So let me show you. And since this also includes updating the attribute and styles, let me show you how that works. So here, so I think everybody is familiar with styling CSS, right? So you can use styles here. So let me show you. Select all. Let me actually clear. There are ways to clear. There. So D3, let's say select all, and then paragraph. And then I can start updating, rather styling it. Let's say font color. Let's change it blue. And doesn't work. Why? Because it's not font color, it's color. There you go. As you can see, the color has been updated. You can also like update specific attributes. And if I want to add an ID there, let's say, no, let's not use an ID because that should be unique. Blue colored paragraph. And it should show you an updated ID. So rather, if you see here, the style has been created earlier and then the class is also appended. So that is just a few basics that you can do with attributes and styling. So actually, let me show you something I also created earlier. So is this that one? Yep, this is it. Just, sorry, I'm having a hard time like showing, where's my files? There we go. So let me open this. So here it's showing a list of data I have in the screen. So basically the code just showed injected data like here. So I selected all paragraphs data and entered that text. Sorry, we're not in that specific area yet. Okay. Actually, let me go to the next one. So the next one is using data with DOM manipulation. So the next thing I'll be showing you is the script here, injecting data. So right now, what we did earlier was just basically placed elements in the screen. So, but that's not how D3 works. D3 is data-driven documents, so we need to use data, right? So here's the thing you could do with D3. So in D3, you can inject data to elements. I'm going to show you that in a while. So for example, you see here, I can select one item and I can inject data there. I can select multiple elements and inject data. One thing to note here is that the data that should be injected should be in array form. And in here, I'm going to use this data for now, data with age and let's say just the gender. And here's this basic script. So first thing, I'm going to select all paragraphs and then put the data there and put the text. So let me show you that. So first thing to note in the script is I already created the paragraphs here. And then the next thing I did, sorry, there's a lot of script here. Yeah, I'm gonna use this one. So the next thing I did is select all those paragraphs, place the data, and updated the text. So to show you that in action, let me just comment this out. So nothing is shown currently. And since I already have those paragraphs, I can select them, right? So D3.select all paragraphs. Again, you'll see that you have selected all the paragraphs in the node list. So the next thing I can do is put the data. So let me look at what's the paragraph. It's aging data. So let me use that. So I have aging data here. What actually happens when I enter this, let me put this with big data, is that when you use the .data method, it adds data to those specific nodes. So let's say, since I have an array, you'll notice that at the very bottom here, you can see that data is already provided for each element that you have. So here as well, let's see, everything has data in it. And then you'll also notice that there's enter and exit. I'm not going to discuss that for now. I'll discuss that later. So what I can do next is update the text for each of the paragraph. Right now, you can see again, the elements, they're all available here, but they don't have the data yet. The next thing you should do is update that. And the thing about D3 is that it allows you to pass here delegate functions. So you can pass functions, for example, here. So I can pass a function here that will catch, that will inject each of the data available per element in this list here. So what we can do now is that we can pass that and then update the text using data. What's my data again? So it's data, and I have, let's say, if I wanted to show male or rather the gender, I can put it here. So when I enter that, you'll see that it updated the text using that specific gender that I used earlier. So it now updated all of those elements. So this works for all of like even attributes. Let's say if I have, let's say, this data, this is the paragraph I have, and you can also update, let's say, attr. If you specifically just wanted to update, let's say, the attributes. Let me use class for now. The data is also available. You can also use the index, and you can, let's say, if I just wanted to use the data.age for now, and then put enter, you'll notice that in the element, it updated the class with those specific data. So it updated all of the elements. So that is something to note. Okay. Another thing, so once we're done working with data, as you can see, it was implemented. Here's what actually happens. It distributes all of those like data in each of the paragraph, as I've shown earlier. The data is here as well. And then in the script, you can run, rather, you could use this specific data to also update your, let's say, style or other attributes. Okay, so here's an example in my code. Let me just comment it out and run it fresh. So here's a paragraph I have. There's also the data. So what I did is that there's a data with text there. There's a color. And then what I did is just basically inject the data and then update the text and then update the color as well. And I just did a specific font size multiplier based on index. So you'll notice that the font size is also different. And I can run this update to just increase the font size, as you can see there. And to make this a little bit more interesting, you can also add transitions, which I'm going to discuss as well earlier. And you can have it like move in transitions, so it looks nicer. Okay, so far so good. Questions?
So far, so good.
Okay, cool. But what if we don't have any elements available yet? So as you can see in my demo earlier is that I already have the paragraphs available, but what if we don't have them? So here, let me show you. Here's a container. I have a data and I don't have the paragraph set. What do we do? All right. So here's where enter comes in. And let's go in depth with that. So let me actually go to the next screen. So I have the same thing here. We're going to use enter here. So what I have is, what data was that again? Data with colors. So I have the data with colors. Again, I don't have any paragraph. So how do we deal with that? So what happens is that, again, we use D3. And what happens is that you select all of the paragraphs. And then you'll see that, I don't have any paragraph. So what you do next here is I inject the data without those paragraphs. Let me show you what happens. So remember the thing I showed you earlier where enter became available? When you inject data, it provides you this enter where it creates enter nodes. And this enter nodes holds the data specific to that one. You'll see it's here. And you'll also notice that the groups you have earlier, you have this array here, which has undefined available. It has, basically what happens is that when you run select all and then those paragraphs and then inject the data, it creates placeholder for them. But this is not yet complete. It just creates a placeholder. But when you use enter, here, let me just create it, entered. So when you look at entered, it now creates those groups now, or rather that group now contains those enter nodes, but we're not done yet. So what happened here is that D3 created a placeholder for the elements that you'll be creating afterwards. So how do we work with that? So how do we place the paragraphs? The next thing you can do, since we already have the placeholder, is to append the paragraph. So let me appended. We just put it there. So what happens next? Earlier you saw that we have placeholders. Now it got replaced with those paragraphs. And you'll notice we have that created. But since I didn't use the container, it just placed it at the end of the HTML. So that's definitely wrong, but let's ignore that for now. And you can also see that the paragraph contains the data. Cool. Since I already have the data available, you can now start, what did I use earlier? Appended. So you can start adding like information to it. So now I have data in, what's that, text. I think I had it wrong. Just double check. So I appended data. And yep, I have text. But it's not showing again because I placed it in the wrong place. So let me just run a quick one again. So again, just to correct that, D3, select all, recap, and then you need to inject the data. Oops, here we are again. So select the container, and then select all, then inject the data, array with data with colors. Once we have that, you run enter, and then you append the paragraph, and then you update the text. As you can see, it looks really beautiful because we can use chaining here. So I can update the text and then data. And it should update with wrong data because I didn't use the correct one. Should be text. Oh, here's the interesting thing. Because right now you can see that I placed the object, so it was a wrong data, and you already have the data available. Instead of using enter and append here, what actually the thing you need to do is just to update the data and replace it with this one. Double check. I'm using the wrong one. Let me actually just refresh. There we go. And paste this one. So as you can see, it now updates with the correct data inside the container. And there we go. So we've seen how enter works, and how about, I also included the presentation, all of the steps here. So if you want to like review this later, you can do that. So again, there's the notice enter array empty define. So let me just skip that. As you can see, I'm running very fast. So again, recap, you select all with a specific selector, and then you enter the, inject the data, and then run enter, and then you insert the element. Okay, but how about modifying and removing data? So when you are modifying data, like you've seen earlier, basically what you need to do is select the element again, inject the data, and just update the attributes. So right now I already have this, paragraph available. So what I can do next is just update it. Let me see, what do I have here? So I have data with colors. So you'll see that we have the text updated. Let me just change all of this to updated as well. Updated 2 and updated 3. So refresh, and we run that here again. So again, we have the elements available, and we wanted to update that with the next data. So how do we do that? What we need to do is select all, paragraph, and then we inject the new data. Data with colors too. Let me just.
Yeah.
Question?
When you do this, do you have to select all from the paragraphs from the container element, or the element with the container ID?
In this case, you can actually just select directly from here. That's fine as well. You can also use select container. That's also fine. Because what it does is just it selects this container first, and using that specific DOM, it selects from there. So it's also fine. For now, I'm just going to use this. So I'm going to inject data here. So you'll see that the updated data, I have the selection here, now has new data. So you'll notice that the groups I have is just this 3, because I don't have enough data. Again, if you look at here, I only have 3 data. So I'm going to modify it. So the next thing you can do is just using this updated data. Again, you can use text, and with that data, I can run this. I did it again. So you'll notice that it updated the string there with object. Let me just rerun that. So update data again. Oops. Using data2 and running the text. Data.text. So it should be updated. But here's a problem you'll notice right now. You'll notice that I updated the data, but the other items, since we don't have enough data, they weren't removed. But what if you actually wanted to remove them, right? You have modified the data. Now, what do we do if we want to remove data? Here's the thing. You need to run exit and remove. Notice earlier that when I ran the updated data, you'll notice that, clear this, updated data, that data, there's this exit here. If you look at it, you'll notice that we have these 2 items at the end, and then there's these 3 items here, empty ones. So these are the things that contains data, and these are the ones that should exit. So let me just show you. Oops. So you'll notice the data it contains are the ones that should be removed. So what do we do there? Again, we run exit and remove. So let me show you. It happens. Actually, let's run step by step. So I'm gonna run exit. So exited and show you what happened. So when you use exit, you'll notice that the current, it returns a selection again with those 3 items in the group. So it was selected, and now you can run remove. Again, this can be changed, but I'm just using this right now to just show you what actually happens with the data. So when you run remove, it gets deleted. Was that clear? Cool. So again, we did modifying of data and removing of data. So next off, so when we started working with D3 before, here's this big problem, because normally what happens is that you get new data from your API, and then things need to be updated, things need to be modified, and some things needed to be removed. So we encountered a specific problem before, and here's just a pro tip there. So dealing with mixed enter, update, and exit pattern. So scenario, you already have P elements available. You will need to add and remove data dynamically. So here is a specific script or a tip on how to work with that. First, you need to update the existing element, then append the missing elements, and later remove the elements that needs to be removed. And here is a sample code. In the future, you might encounter this. Hopefully you do remember there's a presentation here that you could use, and here's the steps you need to do. So again, you need to update the data first, and then you need to append. Then you need to run exit and remove. Where's that? Let me actually show you an example of how that works together. So here's the script I have earlier. What I did is the one in the screen. I updated the data, selected all the paragraphs, injected the data, and then updated the text first. And then what I did next is for the items that were not yet available, I ran enter and then appended the paragraphs and then updated the text. And then for things that needs to be removed, I run p.exit and then remove. And then let me just show you what happens here. So I wonder if not this one. Let me show you. Yep, so actually in this one, you'll notice this is not a very lovely example. So let me show you new one. This one, let's use this one. So as you can see here, as we put everything together, I just had in the script a randomizer for the data. So I created random data, random age, gender, and just random placement for the CX and CY of the circles. And then I just placed all of them here. So as you can see, I entered items, and then after a while, it removed some items, and it added some more items again. You also see that the data gets updated here. There we go. It's very random. So you can see how it works here. Something to note there is that you can see that like the objects show animation. So that's actually available in my next slide. So in the next slide, you'll see that we have D3 transitions and animations as well. So how does that work? It's very simple. You just need to add transition. So, and then you add transition in the middle of like selecting your items and appending them, and then changing the attribute. For example, let's see like which one? Let me open this, very basic. Here. So what if I want to change the size of this object? So I want to select this circle. So I have the circle, and I can update the attribute, right? So I can change the radius to, let's say, 10. That doesn't look very appealing, right? So what we can do is add transition. So I can put transition here, and then let's say I wanted to change that for, let's say, just 2000 milliseconds. And let me change that radius to 75, and let me change the color, or rather, it's called fill here to red. And let's see that run. Looks better, right? So that's the basics of doing animation. There are also like easing transitions. You can also use delay. So for example, if I wanted to put delay here for let's say 3 seconds, let's put this back to 50 and back to, let's say, purple. Then we're on 1, 2, 3, change. There we go. So as you can see, it's very quick to do transitions and animations in D3. Let's go next. Okay, already presented delay. So here is the basic of it. Sorry, it should be transition first before delay. There we go. Next, what we have, we can also do user interactions, event handlings with D3. So in here, I have, let's go back to the circle. What if I want to trigger the updates on the attributes once I click or do something else? So here you can do, once you select the circle, you can run on and oops, on, and then you can put click here. Let me just and then I can say maybe I can select the circle again and then do some transitions here at the top. Sorry if it's a bit garbled. Remove the delay because I don't want that. Then change the size to 1000. And then this happens after I click. Okay, is everything correct? There. So let me click that, then that happens. So you can also do events here. So in the future, once you start like looking at D3 templates for a graph, this will be very useful. Okay, so we're done looking at the D3 user interaction, events, and handling. So congratulations, that's end of the D3 basics. Those are just the very basics you need to learn to actually understand D3. Rather the very basics of D3 to actually work with other, let's say the graphs. Question before I continue. Question or some things you wanted to know? Very basic, cool. So let's go to the intermediate part. Let's have a basic chart. So a simple bar chart like this one can be created with this very short script on the left side. So first thing, again, we have that container. I defined the width and the height. I also appended an SVG. I defined the width and height of that one. I added a border. And then I had the simple data in here. And then like the scripts we have before, I selected all rectangles, entered the data, injected the data, entered, appended the rectangle, and then I updated the attributes. Something to note here, when you work with D3, a lot of the examples you'll see are just basically working with the coordinates, width and height of the SVG elements that we have. So just keep in mind, it's just some of the things you'll need to do in the future if you're going to work with custom visualizations is just what's this? A lot of like critical thinking on how to actually work with things. But I can tell you right now, there's for basically all of the things you'll be working in the future, there are already available templates, so you don't really need to worry so much. In here, in the script, the X and Y axis was defined using index here. You'll see I used the index and then multiplied 20. And the Y attribute uses the height. Again, if I haven't discussed earlier, the coordinates for SVG starts at the top left. It's in the second coordinate of the Cartesian plane. So, and it has the XY coordinate. So in here, to put the rectangle at the bottom, the y-axis needed to be deducted from the height. So here I have height and the data, as you can see, the data is now all numbers. So I deducted that from the height. And then there's the width. The width is 15 for each of the rectangle. So here you can see 15. As you noticed earlier, as discussed, the increment for the x coordinate is 20. So that leaves like a 5 pixel space between each of the rectangles. And then I fill the color to purple. So that's how it works. So as you can see, let me open, where's that? So here's that simple vertical bar chart. Actually, this is a script available if you're gonna explore more in the future. There's a resource available here at the end. So I'll provide you links to specific resources so you could like deep dive into this stuff. Again, you can play around with this rectangle. So since I already have all of that, again, you can play with it. Let's say update the attribute to fill. Just change it to red. And just for added effect. And something to show you what could go wrong. Let's say I change the height to, since I have the data, I can do this, data minus 30. You'll notice that if I change the height, most of the items, it didn't go down there because again, the Y placement is, or rather in the script itself, vertical bar chart, the Y coordinate placement is a height minus T. So make sure that in the future, if you work on something like this, you might encounter the same bug. You also need to update the Y coordinate just to show you what could go wrong there. And since rectangles doesn't allow negative height values, it also produced this error because I just basically deducted 30 without checking whether I'm going to get negative values. Anyway, so that's a simple bar chart. And so for this specific charts, we do have a lot of available templates. So let's say if you go to D3.js.org, you can definitely see a lot of charts available, and there are templates available there as well. With the basics you've learned earlier, you should be able to easily understand most of the charts available here. Like for example, if you want to see the stock group chart, a lot of the things I discussed earlier would be common thing. So you'll see you have data. Oh, I forgot to mention this. Explain. So remember the tip I provided earlier regarding mixed data? So before we used to order things using updating, append, and remove. Now it seems like with the release of version 5, they added something called join. So join allows you to update data like enter, update, and exit data without needing to follow this format. You can basically just use join. So here you might notice in the future that what they did is just put data in there and then run join and do the attribute updates already. Yeah. Sorry, I forgot to include that. Okay. So again, that's a simple bar chart. Next, you need to know what are scales and axes. So here's what an axis is. So we have the x-axis and we have the y-axis. And here's the script on the left side to actually create one. So let me open an example. So here's a scale, an x-axis and the y-axis. Let me start doing this from scratch. So we could do this step by step. Let me just clear everything. Like here, I can delete this, delete that. Two things you need to know when working with scale and axis is you need to also understand what we call domain and range. So what's a domain and range? So a domain and range is primarily used for scaling. So normally when you work with data in the future, your scales wouldn't be just 0 to 100 or 0 to 50. And you also need to plot that in the screen. What the domain and range allows you to do is to specify your minimum and maximum value and then specify a range, which is your conversion. In this case, I'm converting like 0 to 100 pixel to the height of 250, or rather 0 to 100 value to 200 to 50 pixel. And I'm converting the width from 0 to, what's this, 0 to 50 to 500 pixels. So how does that work? Let me actually show you. So here, since I have the X scale already, yeah, I have the X scale. So let's say, let me actually create another scale. So let me create a scale too. So what does this do? We have, let's say, D3, that's scale linear. This is going to create a scale of, let's say, if you have values from ages, let's say 0 to 30, for example, and then you wanted to have have it scaled to, let's say, 0 to 1000 pixels. Yeah. So now I have a scale, and you'll notice that when I run the scale, it basically just allows you to scale things. So if I put 0, I'll get value 0. And let's say, let's go halfway, you'll get 500. So again, the domain is your original value, or yeah, the domain is your data value, and the range is whatever it is going to be proportionally converted to. In some things, in some cases, what they use for range is colors. Let's say, yeah, should try to do that. I haven't done that in a long time, but let's try D3, that's scale linear, and then let's try domain 0 to 10, for example, and then let's just try range. This time I'm gonna put colors here, are red, blue, green. That's right. Is this gonna work? X scale 3, and then I pass 1. Yep, I got the color there, 5. You'll notice that it like gives you a range of colors as well. So this scale is very useful. So let's say if you have a map and you want to show different colors based on the values you have, you can definitely use the scales for that. So again, to create scales, you need to understand domain and range, and that's that. Why are we discussing that? When working with axis, you need to understand scales. So here, let me just show you the code. Here, now that we understand what scales are, we are going to use that to create the axis. So the script for axis is basically just this. Let's actually do that one by one, so it's much clearer. Let me delete this script. I'm just gonna leave the scale there. So here, so now that I don't have an axis yet, let's create that manually. So basically what you run the script is x-axis, and then SVG. So since I already have the SVG available, and append a group. So why do we append a group? Normally when you have axis, it creates a lot of like elements in the screen, and you wanted to make sure that they're not all over the place, so you wanted to group them together. So G in SVG is just a group. And the next thing is you need to, actually, let me show you without a transform. That would be better. So you need to call this D3 axis bottom. So D3 provides a function you can use to create each of the axes. So let me show you just this before everything else. So if I run axis bottom, you'll see that it returns a function that will be used by the script earlier, this call here. So it basically runs call for this appended element, and then runs this function. So let me run that. What it will give you is the axis. So when I run enter, you'll notice it's at the top. And you look at the element, it provides you a lot of group there as well. Remember what I mentioned earlier, you need to group them because otherwise they will be all over the place. So there you go. And some things we do is you can also like add, let's say if you wanted to add an attribute, you can put their ID. So let's say this is my x-axis. You can also do that. Just earlier, I didn't do it for just for demo purposes. So now that, of course, there are cases where you wanted your x-axis to be on the top or on the bottom. It really depends. If I want to, let's say, change the orientation of this axis, I can use axis top. So I can create this one. Let me just refresh, remove everything. So when I run top, you'll notice it's not showing because what happens is that it shows the value in the 0 y coordinate. So the thing you need to do is add some margins in it. So if you'll notice in the code, in the presentation, you'll notice that there are margins and you need to do some computation. So here, let me update the script again. Let me just put that. So what you need to do, groups doesn't actually have an attribute, or rather, yeah, an attribute for the y coordinate. So what you need to use is transform. So here I'm going to use the axis bottom again, and it places the scale. Question so far for the axis? None. Okay. And again, same thing for the y-axis. You're basically using the scale again, but this time for the y scale. And you also have axis left and right. So if you place that there, it places the axis. So that's the very basic of scales and axis. Now, what if I want to place objects there? If you already created your scales, you can already use that to also place your data. So remember, I have the scales earlier, this y scale, x scale. I can now use that to place data. So here I also created an example, which has the basic scale you have earlier. And I'm basically placing circles in the graph. And you'll notice here that the CX and CY, I used the scale to place those circles based on the age. So let me just show you. Where's the file again? And there you go. So this is random. As you noticed, the range also changes. Let me show you the script in there in a while. So when I refresh it out, it gets random data. So what happens there? How did I define the maximum number for the scale? D3 provides what you call min max. I think this is in the presentation as well. So D3 provides min max. So you can, I think this is available in Lodash as well. So you can provide an array, it gets you the minimum value, it gets you the maximum value. So that, I think that's straightforward. So you can get the max value and provide that as the maximum value for your domain. Again, going back, domain is your data. And range is your whatever value you want to that data to be proportionally converted to. Okay, I think that's clear. Okay, congratulations. This is the end of the D3 advanced part. You can now start copying and paste code. But yeah, there's a lot of templates available out there where you can already reference code, build maps, build graphs. And with this basic elements, or rather basic functions I provided, you can already use them to build those things. Wow, time flies so fast. Okay, so what I meant by copying code, so there are a lot of templates available. As I've shown you earlier, there are things like, let me go to the next slide. So when you go advanced, you should be able to like create maps from this basic stuff that I showed you earlier. There are sources here. I'm not gonna go deep dive on them. I really created this stuff over the weekend. So I'll provide the slides as well later. So you can have like the bubble maps. There's an example here. You can also see the code. And since we did the discussion of the basics and some of the intermediate stuff, you should be able to understand like how scales work, how select, data, enter, append work, how do you update the attributes and style, and basically maybe the new stuff that will be different from you is like more deep dive things, especially if you work with maps. There are some available like new libraries that is used when working with maps. So you have there what they call world GeoJSON in this case. But yeah, you can basically copy and paste this code, play around with it, and start like working on your maps as soon as you understand the basics and intermediate stuff. You can even create like cool maps like this. So it's all available in this data.viz.com. Let me show you this in a while. There are also other visualizations you could do, crazy graphs in there. The one thing I would like to share as well as this link, this data.viz. This is a very cool site. It wasn't available when I first started with D3. Not sure when they started creating it. But the great thing about this site is you can see here that it says what kind of data do you have. Pick the main type using buttons below, then let the decision tree guide you toward your graphic possibilities. So if you have, let's say, one numeric value, you can do histogram density plot. There's also two numeric values, not order, few points, many points. As you can see, it's already categorized. So if you are working on a project, you don't know what graph to use yet, you can use this decision tree here to decide on what graph to use. It's super
What
cool.
is this again?
It's data2viz.com.
Neat, thanks.
That's super helpful.
Yes, it's super helpful. And the good thing about here is that there are also case studies here. So let's say you see this story at the bottom. You can click on them. Let's which one? Let's go to the maps. So there are stories here. So if you click on the story, it shows you visualizing geographic connections. It provides you a data, some case study. This one, it's based on 13,000 tweets, it says here. And they plot it in the map. And as you can see, the code is also available. Cool, right? Yeah, and there's those crazy data visualizations here as well. So again, there are networks. If you want to work with them, time series stuff. So let's say stream graph, you can also do that. There are a lot of discussions here on where to use it, how to use it. There's also common mistakes. There are examples with other libraries. So you have rgraph, Python gallery. So if you're working with R as well or Python, you can play with this one. So if you go to D3.js gallery, you'll see this stuff here. And again, all code is available. So again, with the basic intermediate stuff in the presentation, you should be able to like copy and paste code and play around with them. Cool. So these are D3 visualizations. I haven't really had time to start with the D3 hero part, but yeah, there are stuff working with streams as well. So if you have like live data streams and you wanted to plot them in a map or whatever graph you have, you can also do that. Fortunately, I didn't really have the time during the weekend to add more stuff to it. So I'll leave that to you in the future. And then what do I have here? Yeah, Canvas is added in V5. I haven't really had time to play around with it as well. At the end of the presentation, I added all of the resources I have, the official website. There are JavaScript notebooks as well. If you're not familiar with this one, let me just show you. Observable HQ is just like the Python notebooks we have, Jupyter notebooks. So you can run scripts online, run documentation. If you want to like study data, you can use this. So it's available there. Great D3 chart examples I also noted. So here's the database I showed you earlier and some other graph gallery. And if you want to look at this presentation again, I added it in my profile. So the example scripts are there. Also the presentation for this keynote is also there. And that's it, guys. Thank you. Hopefully this is helpful.
Super helpful.
That was really, really good.